The Senate stands adjourned. Senator Cohen.
Madam President, members, thank you for allowing Senator Bach and I to speak for a couple of minutes about two members of our family. Having been here for quite a while, you get to know everybody around here, and there is an element where folks become almost members of the family, and that certainly includes the Capitol Press Corps. And want to talk for a couple of minutes about two of the special members of the Press Corps. In the middle of November, Jim Ragsdale of the Star Tribune passed away. And Jim has had a career in this state, moved here from Los Angeles, I believe in 1980, wrote for both the Star Tribune and for the Pioneer Press. For several years was a member of the editorial board for the Pioneer Press. He had been ill for about a year or so and sadly passed away in the middle of November. So obviously we haven't seen him in this building for a while. But I can tell you that Jim was a special reporter. He was a person who wrote with incredible prose, with an incredible feel, not just for the day-to-day activities of this building, of the Senate, of the House, but a feel for the people in this place and for the environment of this place. And if you read his reporting, his columns, his other work over the years, you would know exactly with what passion and strength and conviction he wrote about his environment, our environment. I'll offer you just a couple of reflections of myself relative to Jim. Jim, again, for several years, was a member of the editorial board of the Pioneer Press. And at one point he wrote an editorial that was critical of something I was doing. And he was actually right. The criticism was well-deserved. I took it to heart, changed the particular legislation, but at some point talked to him about it, and he was apologetic. He said, "I'm really sorry," almost apologetic about maybe just, I don't know, about hurting my feelings. And I said, "Jim, no, it was well-deserved. The criticism was well-placed, but it was almost like he had difficulty that he was even going after me a little bit personally. He was doing his job and doing it in a spectacular way. But it was a reflection of how much he cared for the people in this building, irrespective of party, ideology, or geography. I'll give you another example of what I thought was striking about Jim. For those of you who knew Jim, and obviously we have a number of new members on the floor who never really got a chance to know him well, but one of the things he loved to do is, as we walk up to the chamber, obviously there are just all sorts of people outside the chamber door waiting to grab us. The reporters, however, have privileges to be on the floor as they are today, and that's where we can find the reporters. But Jim would often stand by one of the columns outside the chamber door. And I talked to him about that at one point, and he said, "I like to look at the people. I like to observe the people. I like to have a sense of the ambiance of the place." It was almost poetic in the way he described the visual of this place. I've had some of the same feelings at times, but he put it in a much better way. And I think that was reflective not only of the person that he was, but the way he wrote. And that's why I think Jim Ragsdale was a special reporter in this place, and somebody who for this past year has been missed and in the future will be missed from, I won't say the run-of-the-mill reporting, because I've had an admiration for basically everybody who've been members of the Capitol Press Corps over the years. But I think there was something different about the way Jim viewed this place and did so in a very unusual way. In the gallery present today is his wife, Mary, two of his children, Catherine and Ben. I believe Ann lives out of town, and very pleased they could join us. And allow me to just offer a couple of minutes about a special person, part of our family, a reporter for many years, Jim Ragsdale. And Madam President, if it be appropriate, just have a few minutes of silence in memory of Jim.
Members, please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you.
And Madam President, thank you, and thank you to members for allowing us to memorialize Jim this morning. Members, if you allow me to kind of segue from the sad note to a bittersweet note, and that is the recognition of the senior member of the Capitol Press Corps. And I guess this is a reflection that I've been around here a little bit, because when I was a child House member, Bill Salisbury, who's also in the gallery with his daughter Rachel, Janet could not attend. When I was a child House member, Bill was a reporter for the Rochester Post-Bulletin. And a couple of years later, I believe, went to work for the Pioneer Press, where he's been these many years, covering the Capitol almost the entirety of the time, other than the several years when he was in Washington, D.C. With the Pioneer Press Washington Bureau. Bill is somebody who I've always viewed as just capturing the essence of reporting. When I was a high school journalist, I think what I learned was you're supposed to, and I'll have to defer to the people who are real journalists, that you're supposed to cover the who, what, where, when, why, I believe, of the story. And Bill's reporting was, as best I can recall, with one single exception, always accurate. There was never a mistake. And as the Pioneer Press reporter here at the Capitol, he obviously covered the St. Paul delegation very thoroughly, and would do so in a way where Bill was always very, very careful about his reporting, the accuracy, and the comprehension of what he was reporting. What I always found striking about Bill is that there was always a calmness. You know, there wouldn't be any last-minute desperation calls, deadline calls, whatever. And he was somebody who just was what I considered to be the essence of a political and Capitol reporter, whether he was reporting on stories about us during the session or reporting about us during an election year. It was always the essence of just good, solid, thorough reporting. I can only think of one exception, and that was when I chaired state departments, which at that time was a much larger division than it is now. And we had what was then the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. And there was a particular story relative to a former, it wasn't a story, but there was an appropriation requested by a former governor. I won't name the person, I'll just suggest he's a former pro wrestler. And this was an appropriation to a nonprofit organization. I have historically looked to provide support to nonprofits for a variety of reasons. It had a difference with Governor Ventura relative to that. He felt public money ought to stay with the public entity. And so this was totally out of character. As it turned out, it was an appropriation to a group called Best Buddies, which was a very good organization, but it happened to be run out of Miami, Florida, by somebody named Mark Shriver, who, as it turned out, was related to a friend of Governor Ventura's. Was an in-law to Governor Ventura. And that particular friend was, at that time, the governor of California. So it struck me as out of character, given my conversation with Governor Ventura. And at the moment I'm looking at the budget page, because we're going to have that presentation that morning, in walks Bill. And I said, do you want to take a look at something? And he said, okay. And so he looks at the budget page, and he says, okay. And then I show him, I said, well, look who's the head of the organization. Show him the name. He said, okay. And then I said, do you know who this is? No. Well, I did this kind of test with him, this quiz, and he caught on. And he gets eyes as big the size of the room, I think. And it's the only time I've seen Bill do that. And he actually grabbed me by the shoulder. He said, does anybody else have this story? I'd never heard that tone of voice from Bill, ever. I said, no. And then he very politely, reverting back to the calm, collected Bill Salisbury, said, could I have the story? And I said, only if you come back to me for a quote. Well, it was the lead story the next day. It was on all the news stations that night. Governor Ventura wasn't very happy. He went after me on his radio show in a collection of non sequiturs the following week. But it's the only time, and I tell that story just because it's the only time I've seen Bill Salisbury step out of character as the essence of what I consider to be a news reporter in this building. Bill and Janet, before they went to Washington, actually lived in my district. And for all the conversations I've had with Bill over the years, I have no idea if he voted for me. I hope he did, like I hope everybody else in my district votes for me. But I have no idea what he actually did. And I probably have talked to him more than any other Capitol reporter over the years. But I think his retirement from the Pioneer Press, and he's still going to be doing some work on a special basis. I'm not sure how the assignments will be handled, so we'll see him once in a while around the building. But I can tell you, somebody, again, who's been here for quite a while, we're going to miss having Bill Salisbury as part of the Capitol Corps. And certainly the fact that he retires as the Dean of the Capitol Press Corps is significant in and of itself. That he has put that much effort into an institution that I think all of us worked hard to get here. Hopefully we complain about the institution depending on where we are and what we're doing, but we all take some pride in being here. And I think to have somebody of the quality of Bill Salisbury, of the competence of his professionalism, spend the time in this building doing the kind of reporting he does is certainly something that should allow us to thank him, to salute him, and congratulate him on an incredible career of 40 years. As Senator Bach mentioned, there is a reception. Senator Bach, I will defer to you for anything you'd like to say.
Well, members, I promise to be more brief than Senator Cohen. But I do want to recognize the families, both of Jim Ragsdale and Bill Salisbury. As all of you in this room know, serving in the legislature is not the most family-friendly occupation. And it's about more than just those of us that are members. It's the people that are staff, it's the lobbying community, it's the press corps, whose families' lives are greatly disrupted. Well, we are all here trying to do the people's work, and none of those families get recognized to the extent I think that they should for the contribution that they make, and especially the important contribution that the press corps makes. They really are our conduit to the public so that the public knows what is going on here, and that is just so critically important. And I've found over the years the work of Jim Ragsdale and certainly Bill Salisbury to be impeccably accurate, and always were the kind of people who you could go to and say, you know, what happened in that tax bill in 1986? And they would know the answer as well as any of our staffers would, because they've been just so deeply involved in the legislative process here over the years. So I want to thank them and their families for their service and for their accuracy and for the important work that they do on behalf of the public. So thank you to Bill and to Jim's families. And please join us in room 107. Their families are going to be down there. I believe the governor is coming also for just a brief reception. Try to be as timely as you can getting down the stairs, because you all know we have very few committee rooms, and that one is booked at noon for I think Senator Tomassoni's committee. So room 107 immediately, members. Thank you all.